of what I had said before. Remember, like I said, with the psychological and developmental makeup of the deaf or hard-of-hearing kid, again, that's the visual peripheral vision has been developed stronger with those kids to make up for the lack of that auditory sense to inform the kids about their environment and guide their attention. Okay, so we need to be sensitive to that. Now, yeah, just read through here. This is some of the stuff that's been out there. This is, so we touched on this a little bit like before, but this is what some of the research, again, sorry, I have two, that kids at the front of the classroom, where we were talking about a little bit before, what some of the research is saying is that if they're in the front and they can't see the things back here, those become novel, new things that they're just not aware of, that they can't predict in their visual environment. Okay, so they're going to be more distracted whenever they see something like a kid like moving back here, or a kid moving here, or a door opening here, because it's less predictable. So that kind of what I'm discussing here. It can create greater distraction, and when the timing and location of things in the periphery is not known. Okay. So like intervention, so again, in some of the intervention, if you think about, obviously, we can't always have this with smaller class sizes, with less going on. But with that, that semicircle that we use that at Gallaudet all the time. That's the way our classes is to enhance that, visual communication. And so that's something where there's more in front of the students. Like they can see the other kids in the seats. If this is like where the students are, see the other kids, see everything that's happening in front of them, and learn so that they can predict their visual environment. And then it's easier for them to ignore whatever then they see in the periphery. And then decreasing other types of like good teaching strategies, like trying to increase the amount of like movements and distractions, things going on that you'd use for hearing kids, then also that can be beneficial here too. So let's read through here a little more. So this is something where there's some research out there, but there's more of deaf researchers just saying we need to have more of this kind of research in the future, looking at the participation of deaf children, deaf adults, and deaf teachers, and looking at how they've laid out their home environments, their visual environments in the home environment, and also in the classrooms, and then that can be valuable for other people, to learn, hearing teachers, parents to learn how to physically lay out things in order to maximize attention. So again, what I was saying, that the visually predictable environment, I don't want to oversimplify, but that's like the main thing here as far as how can we adapt our environment to increase the attention skills, and it's really increasing the predictability, you know. And so the more that they know what's happening, that they know what to expect about what's going to happen out here, then the less distracted they'll be. The less novel it will be, the less new it will be, okay? And we can use some good research in the future to do more observation of how certain classrooms are laid out, and there's been, you know, research in the past to show how deaf teachers lay out their classroom very tuned in to that visually predictable environment. Okay, so we can learn from that. Oh, are there more questions here? Yeah. Yeah.
Can I comment on that?
Yeah.
I don't ever. The teachers commonly say, oh, I sit them in the front. I never. Specifically on IEPs, I write, this does not mean sitting in the front. I say that they have to have a clear access to the speaker and to the peers in their environment.
Right, the visual environment.
Specifically put, not necessarily the front of the
Right, right. And that's a good point, because that's what we're normally thinking. Preferential means up close. But then that can also be decreasing the predictability in the visual environment, creating more distractions. Yeah.
All the deaf group classes, self-contained classes in our school, they all have the U-shaped table, the U-shaped desks.
Right.
I mean, we're always that way, and they still tend to look around, no matter if their backs are against a wall that's not moving, you know, they still tend to just kind of...
Yeah, yeah. And then there may be, with those kids, that's where then needing to add something else, you know, other good, you know, behavior management, classroom behavior management systems, attention management systems, and maybe some of the other stuff we'll talk about, some of the other like executive functioning strategies of how do you help a kid remind themselves that they need to be like paying attention and ignoring that, either through through social stories or through other, or like token, you know, systems like reward systems in the classroom to help them remind themselves. That inner speech, inner talk, that's been what some of the other research has talked about, some of the additional strategies to help increase attention that are more connected to like language and self-control, that kind of stuff. You know, after you've first set up the physical environment, you've kind of ruled that out, you know, and then going to have to add a lot of other strategies to, and some kids are going to be more difficult. Was there another question here? Or? No? Yeah.
I think it also depends on the degree of hearing loss. If it's hard of hearing students, you know, I tend to be up in the front to distract, because I am easily distracted. I would prefer to be up in the front. Because I could get so social over here. But, you know, then a student who is deaf would be, you know, much more comfortable in the middle, right, or whatever. And however, the interpreter, it's also a factor. A lot of them do not like to sit in the middle of the classroom, and so there may not be enough room. Sometimes our students have to be in the front when there isn't room to be an interpreter. You typically get kind of comfortable with putting them in the front.
Yeah. So you have to like move it around and kind of mix it up. Yeah, based on who's in there. Yeah, and the type of the kid too. Yeah, their specific needs. Yeah. Okay. Now let's move on and discuss a little the. We'll start and then take a break too. Article. So how many of you kind of know some of the research on theory of mind with deaf kids? A little bit. It's an area where there's a lot more research coming out now on it, and it's you've heard about theory of mind, or how many of you have heard about theory of mind being delayed with kids with autism spectrum disorders. Yeah, it's like an understanding of self and others, you know, and understanding how I feel and think and how that's different from somebody else. Well, there's been more of a recent emphasis on the research looking at that deaf kids that don't have that equal access to language early on can look like kids with autism spectrum disorders with that delayed theory of mind development. However, some of the other research that's out there has also then looked at deaf of deaf, you know, kids with that equal access to language from birth, and they're very similar to the hearing kids with their development of theory of mind, okay? So it's nothing new there. It kind of follows that importance of that equal early access to language. That it's not only affecting the cognitive abilities and maybe the early access to build language and then have that help with reading and writing, but it also affects the social development, social cognition, okay? So this, there's lots of different articles on here, and now, I mean, they're exploring, you know, what are kids with cochlear implants, you know, from early on, how are they, and there's some good preliminary research saying that they can also show normal theory of mind if they've got, if they have equal access to the verbal language from very early on. There's this, I like this article because it kind of really, it makes sense, talking about that there was previous studies that just focused on the delay in theory of mind development, but didn't focus as much on what the reasons why. And here, the importance of like the results of this study is that the kids in these deaf adolescents here that did well with social reasoning, and similar to like their hearing peers, they had that equal access to language, and so it basically supported this hypothesis that if you've got a lot more in-depth language and communication about mental states and emotional states early on, then that can boost that theory of mind development. Okay, that's the important part. It's not whether you're deaf or you're hearing, but it's the importance of the access to language discussing thoughts and emotions. Okay, now where I go with that is that, like, I still work like part-time with like a preschool deaf hard of hearing program. And so we really, we think about this and we really emphasize not only just the language to label things and identify objects and actions, but really move beyond that. Like whenever you're reading the stories in circle time, really be talking about, you know, the characters, what they're thinking and what they're feeling, and how does this action make this person feel. And I know just overall developmentally with preschoolers, you can't get too complicated with that, you know, because so all kids, you know, they're not that advanced with that theory of mind development, but that's how you start developing it. And unfortunately, kids they're starting out. Some of them are starting out behind. You know, they haven't had that incidental learning and the communication about of thinking and emotional states with their siblings and their parents in those early birth to 3 years, and so So we really need to have a lot of enrichment and really kind of like overemphasize that whenever they get into their preschool environments or classes. Go ahead.
You know, I found just a personal observation. I work with middle school and high school hard of hearing students that ASL role plays are just essential. Trying to an older child understand the difference between sorry and regret. If you tell a story and it's in an ASL role play, see the light bulb go off, and they finally make the connection. They intuitively know the difference, but they don't have the language like you're saying, where the you know, the sign is the same. So they need to see it in the context of a story or a social situation for them to really sometimes make those connections.
Right.
It's really pretty amazing.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, right.
One of the other things, back to what you were talking about, teaching those social skills during story time, what we've noticed with our kids is a lot of times they don't know why the student in the story is angry or sad or even happy. So we can say, how do they feel? And they can say happy, but when we ask them, how do you know? They have no clue. So we've been trying to teach them too to pick up on those facial expression cues just even in a picture, and then we see that a lot of times students are picking up on those cues facial expressions, so trying to get them to carry that over in story time as well.
Right.
To say, oh, he's smiling, that means he's happy.
Right, right, that's perfect.
Also
Yeah.
do that in reverse works really, really well, is catch them in the emotion,
Yeah.
and then stop them, talk about it. When they've had this, who else has this? And when you can relate directly to it, because they're feeling it, it's a great time to catch it.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, that's a good point. Whenever it's really happening to themselves, yeah. And then you can kind of match that up. I'm feeling this way, why, and then, and then kind of match that up with, maybe something, they've read in a story where one of their classmates felt this way. They felt that way too because of something happened. But I think, you're right about going beyond just the labeling, and then being able to, understand the why. It's also even like, I think about the differences between like sympathy and empathy, like even like feeling bad, but then empathy, really understanding why you're feeling bad. That's, some of those higher levels that, that we can really start introducing, even in those preschool years. Let's take a break now, and then we're going to continue with this, and then move into some just different activities, okay?
We've also complimented him for setting a good example for us in pausing and giving people time to read the slide, because a lot of us who are teaching deaf children need to remember to do that, because as hearing people, we can read and listen at the same time, but deaf people need to be able to pay attention visually both ways. So that's been a good lesson for me and from some other people that I talked to today. And we had a question during break that we are going to get started with as we come back. Where did you go? Right here. Okay, so we're going to get started with the question.
I just asked, when we're discussing the children, we're saying, okay, we sit in the U shape. We're making sure that we're not visually distracting. We know the techniques we use them. But is there studies, or even as teachers ourselves, that aspect of they're just kids, where they need a break too? And part of that is, like, if you have a visual impairment, you might rub your eyes, or, just taking time away. Like, regular ed kids, all kids need a break, and they don't always pay attention 100% of the time. And I think sometimes we focus so much on our kids who have IEPs, and it's out of good intentions, because they're behind. We need to catch them up. We need to make sure, but also being cognizant of they can be kids. And they're going to need that break, and learning to come back to, I guess, teaching them how to pay attention. Have you found that in your studies? Is that something?
Well, I think what happens is like that research, maybe that research does need to occur more just to keep us just centered about that they are kids. I don't think there's as much research on that area, because it's the researchers feel that where it's like, common sense, it's like, all right, well, they're just kids, they're not going to have as well-developed attention as adults, but I think you're right, maybe there does. Maybe there does need to be more to just say that, sometimes, you can do all the different strategies and focusing on what can be special for deaf, hard-of-hearing kids, but overall, kids do have, they have limited attention spans, and we need to give them breaks, So I think some of the new, go into some of the brain-based research, just brain-based teaching, some of the new books we read at Gallaudet, which focuses more, it doesn't differentiate between, hearing and deaf, hard of hearing here. So I think that can be good to just kind of say, okay, what we're learning about our overall brains, our kids' developing brains, and what are good teaching strategies to help them attend and to give them breaks so to keep them fresh for learning. Oh, I'm sorry. So I think some of there is a lot of research out there with brain-based teaching, that just the focus is more on the overall. So I think that's good, to be able to looking at that stuff in addition to some of the stuff that's, maybe special or, unique for deaf, hard-of-hearing kids. That's a good point, because sometimes, they're just kids, This is go through some of these, some of the different programs related to building social and emotional skills. And this is what I was telling you about before. If you ever had a chance to read this, this is the paths promoting alternative thinking strategies. And again, it promotes emotional and social competencies and works on reducing aggression and behavior problems, or like maladaptive behavior in the elementary ages. I focus, a lot of my slides is going to focus on this one, but there's a lot of programs out there now, and so and some of you have other, I'm just talking about other people have different, familiarity using different intervention programs out there, specific curriculum, like Second Step, right? You guys know that, and skill streaming, that program. I Can Problem Solve, which goes down to the preschool level. Okay, Social Skills Improvement System, which is brand new. It also goes down to the preschool level. I can't name all of them, but
What was the last one?
Social Skills Improvement System. So there's a variety of programs out there, more and more, that are like popping up. That unfortunately they're new even for the hearing population, and they're new because PBIS, is new just overall, throughout the country, working with helping hearing kids develop like their social, emotional, behavioral skills. So less of the programs have specific adaptations in. You're going to have to make your own adaptations to make them work for the deaf and hard of hearing kids. But now this program, I focused on it because it's a good example, and it was developed for deaf, hard of hearing kids. Can be used by educators, counselors, parents, and it's supposed to be implemented like in the natural process of the classroom, meaning like social skills lessons like in the classroom. It doesn't have to be some special pull-out group, for like kids with behavior problems. Okay, and it works with learning how to react appropriately, and controlling behavior. So it's interesting. I don't know of other programs that have actually yet kind of been started, with deaf, hard of hearing, and then, oh yeah, that's a good program. We can adapt, and so there's more research, more recent research that's been with the hearing population, with the success of the paths. So again, this program's used to build generally just those interpersonal problem-solving skills, including like emotional awareness, emotional regulation. And this is important because it shows where the program wants to tie in language with development of social cognition too, like what we were just talking about before, remembering really building the language to help you control your own behavior and to understand your behavior and others' behavior and feelings. Using like that inner speech or inner language in order to guide behavioral self-control is important. So again, this type of program, I've covered the different areas that it looks at: self-control, emotional understanding, interpersonal problem solving, positive self-esteem, and peer communication and relationships. And it really follows that just a cognitive behavioral approach, which is what a lot of the programs do, which is good because, cognitive behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral methods, are the most widely supported therapeutic techniques that have been really supported by a lot of research, okay? And basically where you're trying to have proper thinking up here, appropriate thinking, that's going to lead to appropriate feelings and then appropriate behaviors, So if you can think your way through something and know, what I can do in a certain situation, that's going to make you less upset, meaning more appropriate affect, and then that's going to lead to your appropriate behaviors because you're going to remember what to do, 1, 2, 3, 4, remember like the steps, okay? So that's why cognitive behavioral therapeutic techniques are really behind a lot of these types of programs. And like I said before, it's supposed to be part of like kind of the natural classroom, and I know people use it in a variety of different ways. But it was designed to be, like say, 3 times a week actual lessons, 20 to 30 minutes in the classrooms. Okay. And again, keeping in mind our overall big perspective. Remember, we're really focusing now on those things that are environmentally related, those social, behavioral, and emotional characteristics that, or social, emotional, behavioral development that really needs to be facilitated because if it wasn't addressed in the early, like birth to 3 years, and then you're emphasizing a lot more in the educational component, and also hopefully then helping the parents to practice some of these types of skills at home too, to develop behavioral control, good social emotional language, to develop theory of mind, right? And we'll get into executive functioning. Yeah. This more geared towards like the elementary area. But a lot of the other curricula, I mean, there's a wide variety. Yeah, like skill streaming that I mentioned before. I mean, that's got elementary, it's got high school component. Like I said, the other, like the social skills improvement system and I Can Problem Solve, they reach down to like that preschool level too, so. So what I was saying before, some of the research that has shown good success, starting with, I should have listed these in the opposite order here, but with the deaf, hard of hearing classrooms when it was first developed, and then special education classrooms, and then regular education classrooms too, with hearing kids. And with some of the original studies, with nice, strong support showing that deaf kids that participated in this did show better problem-solving skills, social and emotional adjustment, and improvements in cognitive functioning. Because you see how like social, behavioral, and emotional development relate to the cognitive in this way, like more self-control in like responding, right? Like less impulsive responding, more like planning and saying, oh, when I need to, sit, raise my hand, or wait in order to respond. So it connects to the cognitive functioning as well. Evidence to show it improved language development. Okay. Now next. Executive functioning. We were discussing a little bit before, relating to some of the higher order cognitive skills and also some of like this regulation of like attention and impulsive. Any of you like know which part of the brain is responsible for that executive functioning?
Prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's more like the front. Yes, frontal lobe. Yeah.
What was the answer? What was the answer?
Prefrontal cortex.
Yeah. So the brain development related to executive functioning, it's going to happen, it begins before birth, but continues into early adulthood. Because the frontal lobe is one of the last lobes to get like really fully developed, okay? It continues to develop into a later age compared to some of the other components of the brain. And it really deals with some of those, the higher order problem solving skills and attentional control, self-control. With deaf kids' development of executive functioning can really be influenced by environmental factors, right? If there's not, if not the same language used for learning, it makes sense. It kind of follows in the same line. That executive functioning can be delayed. And there's been research to show that the deaf, hard of hearing children's executive functioning can follow the same developmental patterns as hearing kids if you have that early access to language in those first few years and learn how to use eyes, to learn from their environment.
So if they don't have language in the first few years of their life, does it just delay it, or does it change it? Or, does it impair their executive function?
That's a good point, where it talks, when you think about like with brain, the combination of biological and environmental. Yeah, it would delay, but if you've got some good strong intervention that happens earlier, like say like even in those, a lot happens in those first 3 years, we know that, like as far as how brain changes, but there's still some plasticity, the flexibility in the brain that when those kids get into, with early intervention, getting into programs early on, and if there can be a lot more emphasis built on improving like the self-control and the attention skills and some of those higher order problem-solving skills, then that can show less change in the brain, that the frontal lobe will get developed, but just delayed, but not permanently changed. But you're right. There's if that intervention never happens, and then once you reach, after like age 5 and a little bit later, when the brain becomes less flexible, then you can have something. The brain being different itself, and maybe less amenable to change. That's a good point. Yeah, question.
I just read some research that said that the brain goes through another elastic period during puberty, which is not when we would think around the time, but think of how
It does.
influential peers are
Mm-hmm.
and different situations kids get themselves into which continue on them on a path that's maybe not favorable. So that is another time we can be teaching this. Even though you think, I give up, they're already in junior high or high school, it's not too late.
Like another kind of a critical period where, especially when social skills and relational communication, that's so important. Entering adolescence. That's the time that they can really build the skills and Good point. Now, looking in terms of social cultural approaches to instruction. This again, it's not new, but it's the Vygotsky social cultural theory. It makes sense that there can be good teaching methods that can be shown that are shown to be successful for hearing children, but then also it's been applied to deaf, hard of hearing children. So focusing more on using social interactions and social language in order to have students understand and develop social skills and become independent with those social skills, it makes sense to use a social cultural approach. So I wanted to stick that in here because this does relate to the development of like the theory of mind and executive functioning whenever you think about what you'd want to have with parents really early in life, but if you don't get that, then or you have limitations there, then when they're in that preschool environment, being able to have more good language-rich discussions on social skills and why somebody's feeling this way and how you would feel if somebody did something to you, and using good social learning lessons at that preschool level, with the teacher taking more of a central approach. Again, remember like that scaffolding, the teacher's taking more of a central approach early on, and then backing away as the students can do more like cooperative groups and like independent problem solving, like in a group, and where the teacher needs to facilitate it less. It's just something to keep in mind of that social cultural approach to learning, where kids are going to learn through socialization and through language, and that's how they're going to develop cognition. It has a lot of value here. So again, the the teachers, I mean, all of you, teachers have communication patterns that are influenced by your own, social and cultural upbringing. And in the classroom, teachers can bring this into the classroom and, again, know how much socialization and communication plays a part in helping students develop these skills here, specific learning and thinking skills, some of the higher order thinking skills, and that's basically executive functioning development. So again, research suggesting how language and environmental factors can shape that executive function development. Again, kind of shows how social cultural theory, how using those approaches, using social and language to help build independent thinkers, it will help build executive functioning. Now, executive functioning with deaf, hard of hearing kids, it's obvious that regardless of the level of loss, that visual learning strategies are really very important and emphasized more than auditory strategies with deaf, hard of hearing kids. And so visual attention control, I mean, that being part of overall executive function development is going to be really important to increase the access to language and learning. So this kind of, again, talks about kind of how those visual attention strategies can kind of go hand in hand to make them more available for learning, like the language. Okay, so something to remember there too. You're talking about, if you think of executive functioning using language to help build like self-control, that's one part of it, right? But then also then on the other hand then, you're going to want good sustained visual attention strategies so that they're available to learn like the language to help build like the self-control, okay? The language lessons and that kind of thing. So just something to keep in mind of, because executive functioning is so broad, right? I mean, it's talking with problem-solving skills and visual attention and sustained attention. So the little bit of research here, that there's some research out there showing that hearing parents can be taught to use some of those same visual attention strategies that have been used in the deaf mother, deaf child dyads. And when you think about it for the future for us, it could be there's deaf researchers that are interested in development of and then looking at the efficacy of training for all teachers of the deaf, and in using some of the visual attention strategies from dyads, from deaf mother, deaf baby, and also deaf teacher, deaf students, and using that information to be a springboard for training to help hearing teachers learn more ways, like to help moderate a classroom of visual learners. Okay? All right, now, any questions about that stuff, like up to now? As I said, there's a lot more out there, but I mean, I know I want to. I've got a little bit more time here before lunch, and you guys ready to do just some activities or something? Yeah, tired of listening to me just stand up here? What we're going to do now is, you've got this in your handout there. This is just an example of a behavior management system, okay? Not a perfect behavior management system. It's just one used in a deaf, hard of hearing classroom, like one that I've worked with. And there's 2 pages here, this one and then the next one. So you can follow this. Well, I can't put 2 side by side, but you can follow along in your handout too. What I want you to do is break up into your teams, if you've got multiple members of your teams here, or just even like at the table level. It doesn't matter to me how you want to break up, okay? But I want you to just look through the behavior management system, like this page and then the next slide, and then I've got a slide where you can write down some notes, just suggestions based on what you're thinking about now, like with different visual attention strategies and maybe other strategies to build that social, emotional, and behavioral development, like building executive functioning, building theory of mind, okay? What could you add to this behavior management system? Okay? Does that make sense? And so this, going through really fast here, I mean, this is just it's a very simple, straightforward behavior management system where you've got where the classroom day is broken into every 15 minutes. And so every 15 minutes assessment, this is also a good way you can do get universal screening data too. You know, you're going to have data like for every day in your program. But you've got your classroom rules right here. And if the student's not following these classroom rules, then they move the car from green to yellow. And then if the student stops and then starts again, then the car would be moved to red. You can give simple prompts to say what the student needs to do to follow the rules. And then at the end of every 15 minutes, the student's either going to get the green, or if they're on green or yellow, then they get a penny that goes on their desk. And then the next 15 minutes, then you start this and continue this through your different instructional periods through the day. And then at the end of the day, if they have more than 5 pennies, then they get a prize from the big prize box. Okay? And if they're kids that are out in the mainstream, then the way that they've found it to see if the kid has earned the penny when they're out after they come back from the mainstream, then like asking the interpreter if they followed the expected classroom behavior also out in the mainstream. Okay? Because that adds a additional complicated point there.
What's the targeted age for this system?
This is like an intermediate level, like grades 3, 4, 5. Yeah, total communication, deaf, hard of hearing classroom. Okay? So do you understand we don't need to take a lot of time for this because we're going to do a classroom, but we're going to look at a classroom behavior management system, and then later you'll see some handouts on like a social story, maybe how to adapt that, and then a crisis management system, okay? And that's a good thing that we can do, that we can get accomplished like before lunch here, okay? So I don't know how you want to break up there, but again, just break up in teams or tables or something like that, and just try to start thinking about what we discussed with visual attention, and then also the other social and emotional interventions of how this could be beefed up, and then we'll have like whoever wants to volunteer to kind of like report back to the group, okay? Just give it like 10 minutes or something like that. Who wants to volunteer? Any additional ideas? I saw you guys writing down some good. Yeah, over here.
We were just talking in our group about, Jennifer and I work with pretty kids with multiple needs and pretty severe cognitive impairments. So for them, putting the meeting to the penny. We also talked about just for general deaf kids, if it would be a huge distraction to walk through the classroom and pass out the pennies, like how would that distract people? Is this like what you were asking, Amanda?
Oh yeah, that's it. Yeah, no, yeah. I just want you to just think about what would be some ways to like improve it. Yeah, knowing what you know about,
We talked in our group about and when they do go to the mainstream, that the kids, maybe if they don't get pennies while they're at the mainstream, some of the students might act out of the mainstream so that they could get pennies. So maybe take the system with them to the mainstream. Yeah, maybe, and also just for other kids, maybe picking a prize, maybe something more meaningful to them, like that really goes along, maybe computer time or something that's more meaningful to them.
Okay, good.
We discussed that if, given the system as it is now, if at the end of the day, before a child can pick from the prize box, if there have been any pennies lost, they need to tell you why. We need to have a discussion about that, and what can you do differently tomorrow so that there's an earning going on instead of a losing. So you're working on the social skill development.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, that's good. I was thinking about that as far as finding a way to, well, we're knowing about the importance of language, using language to learn, the behavioral control and good social skills. Yeah, so what it had here, it didn't have enough of that, about like problem solving, of like to being able to use my language and how I can, what I did now and what I should have done differently.
You don't want to do it in the middle of the day, like it says. Don't argue with them.
Right.
That's not the time.
Right, not the time now.
They will
Right.
go on and on.
Because that would just increase the attention function. Yeah. They want attention for the negative behavior. But then, you're right. Like at the end of the day, yeah.
And they're older.
Yeah. Now, and the one, and you're right, but it need to be adapted for a wide variety of the different developmental levels. And one thing that's in here about when it may mention in this program where if the kid is on red and continues to have problems, then going to a timeout place. They don't need to write about, they don't have to, it's not required to write about what they did and what they should have done, but they can draw a picture, of what they did and then a picture of what they should have done to kind of accommodate if there's a lower language level. But yeah, that's good. Were you going to say any?
I was just going to say that even though it says not to argue with them, I have a lot of students who, if you walked around and gave everyone a penny but them, that would send them into such a huge behavior tantrum that it would take away from the whole class. So thinking of ways to do it discreetly or without letting every kid know.
Or using like the simple language that's in like the social skills programs. Something very simple where it's like a step by step by step. Like you didn't do this, and this is why you didn't get this. However, in 10 minutes, you're going to have a chance to get it again. So that they can start to maybe rehearse that simple language inside of their head. Yeah, so that they know that it's going to all start again in another 15 minutes. So that's the way where again you don't have to keep going. You're not going to get into an argument, a verbal or assigned argument with the kids, but you can at least kind of give them like a broken record of things. This is what you did, and this is why you don't get the penny, and then let it go. Other groups here, other good strategies.
I might not even go that much. I might just say, I need to see your eyes on me, instead of, you weren't paying, just tell them what they need.
Right, the behavior that you want, yeah. Good.
I think in our group what we need to do is, I have some children who, if I had a cup on their desk, it would be on the other side of the room. Okay, so I don't know if I would put anything on their desk.
Right.
But I would also try to incorporate some way into a self-monitoring program. As far as executive functioning, I want them to be able to monitor their behavior.
Right.
Not just somebody constantly through the day saying, this is how I monitor your behavior.
Yeah.
So I would prefer a system where they actually do more of the self-monitoring.
Right.
And therefore you two can determine if you both feel the same way about the behavior.
Yeah. Maybe.
System or whatever.
Yeah, it was comparing ratings even, like saying like I'm going to give you that you think that what are your, you think you followed it, followed the rules during these 15 minutes. Yeah, it's good. Any other suggestions?
Yeah, an idea, Shannon, that we were talking about the visual attention and that it's unrealistic after talking about this visual field being larger to think that they're not all going to be drawn to when you go move the car to the yellow, but maybe in the teaching of the system, you would have kind of a system where the car is moved, I count back 3, 2, 1, and that gives everyone time to eyes back on teacher.
Okay, yeah.
So that we're not drawn to the fact that who's moved and I have yellow and you have green. And
right.
So in the teaching of it, you do a time constraint that then your car could be moved again because you didn't move your eyes back over.
Right, so that you're not creating more distractions from the movement from the system, right? Right, good.
I don't know if it's really for the procedure itself, but it's more we discussed a little bit of the incentives. So whatever is in this prize bucket or box, for a preschooler, it might be fun to get a pencil, but I teach junior high, kids these days would be like, why do I have to pay attention for a pencil? You have to make sure it's motivating to that student at that particular age level.
Great, good.
Oh, I was adding to what she said too. You said every day they would get this incentive. We thought about people that we paying for this incentive. And even if you went to the dollar store, you had 8 kids in your class, and some of people have more than that, and you have 8 kids in your class, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
During the week, and
right.
$40 a week. So we thought for the older kids that you would do it, you know, they would accumulate a certain amount of money, and then at the end of the week, they would be able to do
Right.
something that's appropriate for that.
That's good. The older kids are able to delay that gratification, yeah, so they're able to be able to hold that. And then also the use of other types of rewards, right? Not just tangible rewards, but social rewards and other types of things that are valuable to the group. Yeah. Yeah.
Create a menu with older kids too. They each have their own menu, but on there are not necessarily things that we have to buy. It might be 10 minutes extra with a friend to play a game, or we have an elevator in the school. Some of our kids will even work just to ride the elevator.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah. Be creative, yeah.
Those are the kinds of things
Yeah.
that we put down. Because we set the parameters and we have to be able to do it in school. So we come up with some suggestions as a group, and they start creating their own menu. And then they'll come along and they'll say, oh, I'd like to put something else on my menu. So they put something else on their
That's
menu.
good, yeah.
You know, as they think about things. So you can't do that. How about putting it on your menu? You know, so we do it like that.
Yeah, that's good. Any other suggestions? Those are good. Now we're going to move next into a little bit more individual approach. I don't know whether you looked ahead in the next couple slides. It just describes social story. For one of those students like that you described before, that doesn't just sit there and enjoy the rewards, but a student who gets angry whenever something's not going his way, and so a specific social story was developed. So it's thinking in those same lines of what could be good, like for self-monitoring strategies, visual improvement strategies, strategies to help with emotional self-control, and social skills in general. What could be used to maybe add into the social story? It's kind of a long one, you'll see, but we could think of things to maybe be like eliminated or like more of a different focus. Okay, wait, let me go. We can just go over it real fast together and then kind of break up again. That school is fun. What happens when you go to school? Gets to see friends, learn things, follow the rules, gets the prize when you follow the rules, and you need to have the name on the green check. And then what happens if not? You go to the red, which means like the red car. And how you're feeling when you've got the red check or the car move, what you need to do, like relaxation strategies, try to relax, take deep breaths. If that doesn't work, then you need to maybe go take a break in the timeout chair. And things to do, count, take deep breaths, draw the picture of what you did and what you could have done. Okay? All right, so go try to think of, what else could we kind of add to this and kind of change it? So again, kind of work just individually for a few minutes. You guys ready? Just tell me if you need a little bit more time. You're okay? Are you ready? So what have you been thinking about? What do you suggest for improving that? Maybe we can divide it kind of like the first half here. What are you gonna say?
Fewer sentences
Hmm?
and shorter sentences.
Okay. Good.
Pictures, so like a picture of a person getting mad and then a picture of, what they can do. So it's kind of like
Good.
a picture schedule.
And the original social story did have that. Yeah, it just didn't have it up on the, But yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's a must-have, to have the picture describing. Who else? Yeah.
Or use like the comic strip technique so that you can get like more information into the pictures.
Okay.
The comic strip.
Yeah, like a sequence of, what happens, Good. Yeah, Pierre.
We were going to suggest making another social story that describes what the rules are. Like when I'm sitting, when the teacher's talking, I'm sitting with my hands folded. I'm looking at the teacher when she's talking.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. I was thinking along those lines too, as far as that they talks about what he needs to do in order to get the prizes. Yeah, but maybe not enough on what are like just specifically in the social story. Yeah, what does it look like to be following these rules? That I'm sitting here, eyes on the teacher. Yeah, and you could use it. You could use some really simple language from different interventions in the social skills programs. Like some of the I'm thinking of skill streaming, very easy. Like how to what does paying attention look like? We do first, second, third. So you could really incorporate and pull some of those specific skills, social skills, and put it in to the social story and adapt it. Yeah. So focusing on what does it look like for me doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah. What was another? Some more. There were more hands over here, I think. Or over here. Yeah.
Kind of along the lines of that. And the students decide they think paying attention is not listed, so they're a part of deciding what the rules are.
Excellent. And that's really thinking again from a social.
Could you ask me to say with a voice out, please?
Oh yeah. Okay. Repeat it again.
Saying making the students a part of the rules, of making of the rules, like asking them, well, what do you think paying attention looks like, and having them, maybe they'll own into it a little bit more.
And that's a wonderful application of social cultural theory, right? And how it applies to the classroom, right? If you're going to use learning occurs in socialization and with language, so if you're going to use the social group to design, what are our rules going to be? What's important to our social group here in this classroom? And then using language as a psychological tool to explain that. I mean, that's very powerful social cultural perspective there that really has good applications for how you're going to build. Yeah.
We talked a lot about how to modify it more for a lot of our deaf kids to individualize it so that most of the social stories you see there's too much language. The examples you have, I don't have any kid that can read that. And
a lot of language.
So to break it down and use a lot more visual, even using a digital camera, taking actual pictures of the expected or desired behavior as well. You can have them acting out. Like she's saying, having them a part of it, having them show you what is the good behavior, what is the bad behavior, and then using even their language, even if it's not grammatically correct, but that they write, okay, this is how I should say it or whatever, and it doesn't matter if it's just at their level that they understand it, so that when they're looking at it, it's going to be useful.
Right. And it's almost like we're moving beyond what the individual social stories would be, because we're incorporating some classroom intervention too, right? Kind of like if they're going to be developing their social stories of what does it mean, to follow this rule and this rule and this rule, but then also they could include in that, that we practice it. My teacher shows me, my classmates help me understand. We practice the skill. And even include that very simply with pictures, like you said, of the actual specific social skills that they're learning. So. Yeah, so really incorporating a whole, more emphasis on classroom